So today we will be creating a guessing game in Visual Studio. We are using Visual C Sharp, and I've created a new project and called it Guessing Game. And I've chosen to make it a C Sharp Windows desktop program that is a Windows Forms app. So once I get that started, you can see that I have my form here, and we'll get started by placing my elements on the form. So come over to Toolbox, and we want to use just the common controls within our toolbox. If you click on your thumbtack, you can dock that there on the left-hand side, and under the common controls, we'll be working within there. So I have my form set up here. If I click on my form, I want to give it a name. Let's call this Guessing Game. Let's call it, first of all, let's give it a name. So that's Guess. Let me just call it FRM Guess. And down here, under the properties, I want to give it text, maybe that says something like Guessing Game. So it's important to understand when you're changing the name, you're changing the controls name within your program. When you're changing the text, you're seeing what the user will see. So for this game, we need to have a button that the user clicks. Let's give that a name. And we can change here that says guess or check. And it's always good as you create these to name them. I like to give them a prefix that says what type of control they are. So BTN for button, BTN check. And let's add a label onto here. And let's call that LBL guess. And we can go down to text and put guess the number. And you can work on changing the font and whatever for that. But for right now, for time's sake, I'm just going to put these items on here and a text box to type into. We don't need to have, and we can put 0 in there if we want a default value. And let's call this the prefix txt, and let's call it guess. So what's nice about having a prefix is you can give kind of the different numbers the same values, and you can give it call it the same thing, but with the prefix you can tell them apart. So now we have everything laid out. Our next part is for us to start putting in the code. So I would like it so when this runs that the check button, I can press enter. So if I click on my form, there's something called accept button over here, and if I choose that button as my accept button, it'll allow me to press enter when I'm typing in the value. You can also make this right aligned here. I think we say multi-align is true, and we can set the alignment here. Text align, there it is, and let's set that to be right. Okay, good enough. If I double click on my button, and I would avoid double clicking on your items because you'll see what happens. It puts me into the form. Up at the top I have my design of my form and my code, and it auto generates within all of these other items, and you can collapse that to make that a little cleaner. You can see it's called Guessing Game, and then I have a form already, and inside that form I have the code, and because I double clicked on the button, it creates this event procedure. It says this code is going to run when my button is clicked, which is how we use a button. So to start off with, I want to start with a message box. Let me just start typing that in. It should help you out there. And I want to show a message box. And I am just going to put right now what's in the text box, just so I can try that out. So txt guess, that shows up, dot, and I want the text property to show up. Semicolon at the end, and if I run that, that's going to allow me to, and I would always recommend saving before you run, that's going to allow me to see whatever I type in. So when I click on start, it's going to execute my program. It's going to load up that form. If I have any errors, it'll tell me about the errors. Sometimes the first time you go about it, it takes a little bit to get that going. All right, so if I type in a number here, let's put 10, and I press enter, it's going to spit that right back out to me. All right, great. So let's close that. That's good. So what we want in our guessing game is we want it to have a random number that it guesses against. I would recommend starting with a small random number. So to create a random number, we create a random object, and then we can call that something like random, and we'll just say equals a new random. And if you haven't done object-oriented programming before, which you probably haven't, you'll have to kind of get used to this. This is how you generate a new object. So we want a random object, and we want to create a new one, and that's how that works. Okay? We probably want to put that into an integer value that we can use. So the next thing here for me is I want to set a value to that. I'd recommend starting pretty easily. Now what I did there was I double-clicked just on my form, and that brings up an event procedure for my form called load. And that gets executed when the form starts, when the form loads. So what I want to do is I want to tell it this random number here. I like how that's formatting. There we go. R equals random dot next. So next allows me to generate a random number, and I'm just going to do it between 0 and 5 because let's test this program out. We don't want a whole bunch of numbers we have to guess to test it. Okay, so that's going to generate me a random number. So now what I can do is up here, let's test it. So what do we want to do? Well, we want to say if something like whatever's in the message box, if that equals my random number. So I haven't created the variable yet, but let's say if A for answer equals, I don't know why I put that in there because it doesn't know I'm going to have a variable. Equals, that means it's equal to. If those are equal, then we're going to say something like, and I'll copy this. Undo, pasted, and I didn't want it to. All right, well, I'll just type it in here. Message box. And I can put you win or something like that. Okay. What I need to do now is I need to have my answer. So I'm going to say int A equals. Now what I want is I want what they've typed into the text box. To do that, I can't just compare it in Visual C#. I can't compare my random number, which is an integer, to a string that's in my text box. Other languages play okay with that, but I can't do that here. So I need to convert. I'll use the convert object for that. I need to convert to an integer, and I'll choose a 16-bit. And I need to convert what's in that text box. So txt text, or excuse me, guess dot text. I'm going to take what is entered in, and I want to have that, this should be a capital T, I want to have that converted into an integer. So now when I'm comparing this, I'm comparing what's in my text box, that's A, that's my answer, to my random number. And if those match, I need a right parenthesis here, if those match, that's going to say that you win. All right? So always save before you test it. And I'm going to have to do what? I'm going to have to try this. 1, doesn't do anything. 2, you win. So the number was 2. Now, that doesn't give me much feedback if I want to say, okay, that's the wrong guess. Okay? So I can add on to here an else. Let me make sure. Yeah. All right. So if it's not true, then I want to say something like maybe, guess again. Now, another thing that you can do on here is, you can have another little message box here to help you, or you could add onto this message box just while you're practicing coding. You could put this, well, we don't need to put that on. We could put the R on there, and that would actually help us cheat. So if I put that on there, that would actually display what the random number is. So I could run this now, and if I don't guess the right answer, so let's say 3, it says guess again, it says 2. Well, the 2 is the actual right number, so now if I hit 2, you win. Okay, so if you want to do this like to 25, but you don't want to have to actually test a whole bunch of different numbers, you can throw yourself a little hint, and then you can always go back and do that. I think you probably want to put like guess a number between 1 and 5 or 1 and 25, and we could even go in later on and have them enter the number they want to guess to, and we could keep track of the number of tries. But this is a good place to start, and good luck making really your first main program in Visual C#.